Goodness me, a ton of important and impactful Pacers news. Tyrese Haliburton talks recovery. TJ McConnell throws out a first pitch, and there's something you didn't see there. Kevin Pritchard was connected to the Raptors. James Johnson talked about free agency. Mike Weiner's gone. Johnny Carpenter's here. Woo! How does this all impact the Pacers? We have a lot to talk about on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Thursday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, holy smokes, so much stuff has happened in the last few days, and a lot of it, all of it, is going to impact the next Pacers season or seasons. Tyrese Haliburton talked about his recovery. Kevin Pritchard connected to another job. And Chad Buchanan. TJ McConnell was active at the Indians game. James Johnson talked free agency. And the coaching staff is changing. Whew. I think that's it. All this just happened in like 5 days or something crazy. Quite the time. Quite the many things to get to today. I've been at as many of them as possible, including Tyrese Haliburton's camp over the weekend. Many of you have already heard the things Haliburton said or written stories about it. But if you haven't, he spoke in Indy for the first time since the finals at his camp over the weekend. He spoke in Oshkosh and I think at Iowa State earlier in the offseason, but this is his first time with local media since. So first of all, unrelated to anything about his Achilles tear and his recovery, which does have a specific thing that I think you need to know. He was originally scheduled to have his camp in Indy, which he's done every year since he got traded here, by the way, on June 28th, I believe, like right after when the finals would have ended. That got announced like pretty early in the playoffs. So who knows if he would have done it if they just lost Game 7, he didn't get hurt. Obviously, they couldn't do it then after he did get hurt. Not many players would reschedule and still do it at a different venue in Indy. Good on him for doing that, right? Good on him for coming back. Like, he can't hardly participate to the extent he normally does, but he was like refereeing and walking around the extent he could, smiling in every picture. Good on him for doing that, right? And good on his Pacers teammates for showing up for him. Cam Jones was there. Taylor Peter was there. TJ McConnell was there. James Johnson's not even on the team. He was there. General Pargo was there, a bunch of other Pacers staffers. Anyway, that's all the stuff that says a lot about Ty. Like, those guys aren't just showing up because he's their vet and he's hurt. Like, they actually really like him. But the stuff that you need to know. Okay, it's been about 8 weeks, he said, a little over that, and his recovery journey. Me talking right now, I think it's been 2 months and 2 days since his surgery. He called it 8 weeks at the time we were talking to him, which is fair and fine. And he is walking out of a boot sometimes. He took, obviously, the Puma promo picture with no boot on that you saw on social media. When we were there and when he was doing some refereeing stuff, he was in a boot, which I don't know the exact timing of when he would take it off or how that all works. But that is the current status of his recovery when it comes to the boot. The boot coming off is a big deal, not because he can like actually do anything with an Achilles injury, but it allows him to do weightlifting, do arm stuff, be more mobile, right? Like, we saw Isaiah Jackson and James Wiseman, what they were able to do, just like launching a heavy ball off the backboard during the season. Like, it helps with your strength and all that. And you can work on other stuff. Ben Mathurin had a shoulder injury a couple of years ago, and he could still do leg work. He could still ball handle with his left hand. Like, the more you recover, the more you're able to do, the better. And obviously he has a plan and things like that, but getting out of the boot, that is step one to getting that all to come. He called that a small win, which he wants a lot more of. He is, of course, falling in love with the grind of recovery, even though it feels Groundhog Day-ish. Some people he's leaning on that I think will be interesting, because two of these guys will talk to quite a bit about the Achilles recovery process throughout the season. I think you can see where this is going. One is Caitlin Clark. She's also injured, obviously, and they have spent time together in the weight room, and their time just overlaps, and they happen to chat about recovery and things of that nature. They're super close. I think that's pretty cool. The other two that I find quite funny are Isaiah Jackson and James Wiseman, two guys who have also gone through the Achilles recovery process in pretty recent times, obviously, are still going through it, honestly, is probably a better way to phrase it. Haliburton called them the perfect duo to vent to because they are currently / just did go through it, and they actually understand what he's going through that. And they understand the emotions, what he's feeling, muscular wise, things of that nature. Like that's actually a rare, not advantage. It's not like, oh my gosh, this changes everything for Haliburton, but it's a big deal to have those kind of resources available in general. Like not a lot of guys, when I've talked about, for example, I just did a Wiseman show and I went through some recent NBA players who tore their Achilles and how it impacted their back-to-backs. Basically, none of them played in them. But you go through those guys and like none of them were on the same team or at the same time. And obviously the Pacers having 3 right now sucks. It's not a good thing. But this is a small advantage is one for the team side in general. They have seen the process up close for a year. They understand the benchmarks. They understand the limitations, what to do, etc. And it's good for Haliburton to have that kind of resource to lean on. It sucks for the young centers that they have to hear him vent, but such is life. But I consider that mostly a good thing. And I think it's good for the understanding for fans about the recovery process that, everybody will be able to check in with Wiseman and Isaiah Jackson, obviously not overdoing it, but just like, what was it like at this stage and that stage? And how can that apply to Tyrese? And, did you give him any advice, stuff like that? Like that'll actually be a good learning experience for everybody, including you, the fan, about the process. So I thought that was pretty interesting. The biggest thing that Haliburton said about his recovery is not actually news, but it's still something that made me go, oh, okay, noteworthy, write that down. Okay, we know he's not playing this season. So if you said what's his timeline to return? Everybody would say the start of the 26-27 season. Yes, that's his play on the court timeline. Someone asked him about a recovery timeline. Is there a structured date of return? And he said no. And one, that's fine. There should be no pressure for him to return this season. But two, just know that there is not a benchmark date that if Tyrese Haliburton's not healthy by, start to panic or anything like that. If he's ahead or behind schedule, it's not a thing. Right? He does not have a timetable to return. And I think getting hurt on the last day makes that a possibility. They don't have to try to rush it. They don't have to try to slow play. They don't have to try to put a date on it. They're obviously going to. So here's the thing about timetables. You hear no timetable for a player. That's no timetable for the public or for you and me. Right. And that's fair. Everybody has a recovery schedule and there's generic goals, but no specific time, no specific this is when it has to happen. I thought that was at least noteworthy or interesting. Not that I expected him to have one, but just because of who he is, I wondered if he'd say, I really want to be doing this by this. This is good for him to not have to go through that. And I think everybody kind of rolled past that because he was out for the season, but nothing to hold him to, I think is a good thing. The last bit of news from Haliburton at his camp, not about his injury, not about him, not about the camp. He has talked to Miles Turner since the departure. Obviously, he said the same thing every NBA player says about their teammates when they leave them. He said he had to make the decision that is best for him, and that was pretty much the end of that. You can see the whole thing. I put the whole interview, I think, on my YouTube channel, or in Forbes. I wrote a whole story about his camp, his recovery, what it means for the Pacers, the 2 young bigs, all sorts of stuff like that. But that's the first time he's talked locally. No finals questions. I hope we can talk to him about the emotions of that and the day it happened at media day if he speaks, or if he even speaks, very often this season, because you probably won't hear much from Tyrese Haliburton this year. We'll see him a lot. He certainly would like to be around the team and as involved as possible. But that is your Tyrese Haliburton update. For a much smaller update that is less important that I mentioned the other day, expect a number change coming for the Pacers this year. James Wiseman, I mentioned this offhand in the Wiseman episode 2 days ago. He is switching from number 13 to number 11. Tony Bradley is still on the team. Tony Bradley's number 13. Tony Bradley swooped in and it was Mr. Steal Your Number last year when he took 13 after Wiseman was traded away a couple weeks before he arrived. He's still 13, so James Wiseman has to change his uniform number, I believe, for the second time of his career. He's only been 33 or 13. So if you have a James Wiseman jersey that you got after the preseason or after his one regular season game, you now have a very, very rare uniform up there with an Isaiah Jackson 23 uniform or any other of the Lance Stevenson 6, all these funky different Pacers jerseys of legend. James Wiseman 13 now joins the crew. In much more serious news, TJ McConnell spoke. James Johnson has spoken. So much about Kevin Pritchard, the coaching staff, that I want to get to as we continue on today's Locked On Pacers. Before we get to any of that, though, we need to talk about Monarch Money. Most people cannot name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments, and you don't have the full picture. You can end up leaving money on the table. That is why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface right on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. They do the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. You can see why you're not saving as much as you thought by seeing spending categories or inefficient investment allocations. You can maximize your investments, increase your savings rate, review your finances with a partner. It's all super easy, and you can chase financial health, set goals. Do not let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. How about that? That's 50%. That's a lot off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNBA. Back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making this your first listen today and every single day or second listen. Locked On NBA Game Night. The other night, Danny Cunningham and I discussed why the Mavs are a lock to make a move in the near future. And then the very next day, Mark Stein reports that they're getting more active to move Omax Prosper. Look at that. Sometimes you pay attention to enough teams in the salary cap, you can get ahead of these things. So go listen to that to see what we thought the Mavs might do and why they might do it. Spoiler, a lot of PJ Washington and Dante Exum talking there as well. Okay, in Pacerland, TJ McConnell throughout the first pitch of the Indians game on Wednesday. That's not actually news. That does not impact the Pacers season at all. In fact, he didn't really field any questions about the Pacers or his offseason at the event. There wasn't really a chance to do that, but I still found something noteworthy that is related to the Pacers there because I've been working on a TJ McConnell story, and it actually ties in quite well to something that happened there, and that's that everybody showed up. A lot of Pacers staffers showed up. A lot of assistant coaches were there, and Jarris Walker was there, and Cam Jones was there, and Taylor Peter was there, and Quentin Jackson was there. That's just that I saw. That is, more people might have been there. Bring people together kind of teammate. A lot of those on the Pacers. I just talked about that with Haliburton, right? That says a lot about the team that they have and why this works. Like, happy players play hard and play well and for each other. I've come to learn that talking to people around the NBA and watching the NBA and being around teams over the years. And you just see that bond with every single player. And you saw that with McConnell when he's thrown out a first pitch and Quentin Jackson's cracking up off to the sideline and a basketball assistant is his fake practice catcher, right? You know, McConnell didn't play basketball after he said sixth grade, so he was really worried about his pitch. So in the St. Vincent Center where the Pacers practiced, they set up like the distance of a mound and practiced, and one of the basketball assistants had to be the catcher, right? Like, he was really worried about that, but everybody was there. He did mention that it's a short summer. I guess that was noteworthy. We'll see what that means for everybody's season next year. You know, we've seen the struggles from teams that have made the finals in the past about how difficult the following season can be in many ways. But the teammate connection is actually what I'm writing about with TJ McConnell, because it's impressive to me how many players on the Pacers just naturally play with him, and it like clicks pretty quick, right? The premise of this was Obi Toppin, who switched from starter with Haliburton, and everybody, including me, said, well, Toppin might start because he naturally will fit way better with Haliburton than without. And I think that's still true. I think basically everybody on the Pacers fits better with Haliburton than without. But the fact that Toppin could come off the bench with McConnell and still be quite impactful and impressive and not be so reliant on the passing and transition brilliance of Haliburton, right? That says a lot about Toppin, first of all. But that also says a lot about McConnell, that he's able to execute the Pacers style and make those connections. But he has good chemistry with everybody. Like, he's actually done well to keep Mathurin involved. His chemistry with Ben Shepherd's very obvious. He was quite good paired with Isaiah Jackson or Jalen Smith or Thomas Bryant, like literally anybody in that role. Like, him and Jarris found synergy together. And I was asking Pacers players about that natural connection with McConnell during the season for a story that I didn't get to run for various reasons. But now I'm going to do it because of the stuff that we got to see at the Indians games. And that teammate connection is just what makes him so fascinating and so good. And that natural bonded two-man game is part of why he and the second unit have been credible for most of his time here, and why it was such a big deal that they were struggling at times this past season. But good news for Jarris Walker this year, who has a big year coming his way, and he was there. Good news for Jay Huff if they / when they partnered together. So look, it's just a guy throwing out a first pitch at a baseball game and not actually news of anything besides him saying the summer felt short. But still of note how many people were there, and still of note that he, you know, has that kind of popularity among his teammates. And he wanted to throw a strike. I don't think TJ McConnell is going to listen to this podcast, but TJ McConnell, that was not a strike. That was not even really close to a strike, but he did get it across the plate. It was not embarrassing for a guy who stopped playing baseball when he was whatever sixth grade is, 11, 12 years old. Speaking of other players, one who was not on the Pacers but was last year, and speaking of connecting people, the best there is at this that I've ever seen in the NBA on any team, James Johnson was at Tyrese Haliburton's camp, and I got to talk to him. He was very nice to give me any amount of time on the record. No one has to do that in a setting like that. So thank you for James Johnson for doing that. It informs fans. It informs me. It's good for you. James Johnson and I talked about his free agency because I was very curious what he thought his status was. And we heard Chad Buchanan on Setting the Pace. Shout out to Alex and Facci. And I believe it was Alex Golden's birthday yesterday. 4 minutes ago is when the calendar flipped, so no longer. Chad Buchanan said that he, obviously that James Johnson felt like family to many Pacers people, which is why they liked him and wanted to keep him. But he said, whether there's a roster spot for James right now, it can be challenging to find a spot as much as we want him back. It's painful to think of our team without him moving forward, but it may be reality just because of our roster situation right now. And he also revealed that he talked to James Johnson and he wants to keep playing, right? That's all we knew of that at the time. And obviously the Pacers roster was full, right? Turner out, Bryant out, Johnson out, Cam Jones in, Jay Huff in, and I'm missing one, James Wiseman in as their outs and ins. Like, they didn't have room for him, and they don't have room for him right now. They obviously have the non-guaranteed contract of Tony Bradley. You can say what's more valuable to the Pacers, James Johnson or a fourth center, given the health of their centers, and I would accept both answers, but I at least understand why they have the team they have. Regardless, James Johnson, he was there at the camp. That says a lot about him and his relationship with Tyrese Haliburton. If you don't know, James Johnson has nicknames for lots of his teammates. Tyrese Haliburton's is franchise. I think that's very fun. Regardless, at the camp, I said, do you know your plans for playing yet this season? He said, I quote from James Johnson, I haven't made that decision to retire yet. I still want to play, help one organization, and help bring culture, right? That's what he's the best at. That's what he was awesome at with the Pacers. He was great at that when they were a young team winning 30-something games. He was great at that when they were a winning team winning 50 games, and he's appearing in NBA Finals games, right? He is that kind of dude. If the team is slacking off, he gets him into shape, but I think he's better at the opposite. When the team is riding a high, when the team is riding a high, he's very good at keeping everybody in the right mental space to, of course, be celebratory and in a good mood and things like that, but also focus on what they have to do and, the task at hand. You can see it on the bench. You can see it in the locker room, carrying guys who are injured off the floor. Just a good dude. And then later I asked, would you play somewhere that's not the Pacers, right? Because he said he wants to play this year. Obviously, it's quite the connection with people here. He said, like I said, I want to play. I know Chad and KP are one of the best at what to do in the NBA and an organization. They're going to have to make the decision they feel is best for the Pacers. I also have to do that for myself. That seems to me to indicate that he would play somewhere else if the opportunity was on the table. He obviously also has great respect for the Pacers, what they're doing, and their current roster situation, which pretty much aligns exactly with what Chad Buchanan said. So I'm inclined to believe everybody when two independent interviews land on the same answer. So as of right now, I think the answer is it's probably not a roster spot for him. Because I think that if you ranked the Pacers' needs, what could happen is in training camp, everybody comes in and Isaiah Jackson looks phenomenal and James Wiseman looks healthy and phenomenal, and they don't need a fourth center. But still, if you rank the Pacers' need, they need a third point guard, or they could use a third point guard. They could use a fourth center. If you think James Johnson's more valuable than those things, and to be clear, when it comes to veterans, he might be, right? But those are the things they would need. So there might be a role for him if the centers are healthy enough, but they might need a center. They might need a point guard. It's much harder for them to fit him in at this time than it has been in past seasons. That said, 2 seasons ago, they tried to start the season without him, and then Game Ball Gate happened. They said, just kidding, James Johnson, come back, please. We need you. We would like you on our team again. And lo and behold, then for the next game, James Johnson was back on the team. He signed 7 contracts with the Pacers since 2022-23. Very clearly valued by the team and what they do. So I'm not counting it out as over yet because there's still a non-guaranteed slot on the back end of their team. But there certainly are, because of, and Chad kind of alluded to this, their reality as a team and roster situation really changed with Turner gone and with Haliburton hurt. They have very different needs. And I think they would hope that somebody else would step into that. But obviously, if they could have him, they would. Some of you will do the comment of, why doesn't he just coach? Well, if he wanted to coach, maybe he would just coach. But it's different salaries. It's different responsibilities. It's just different. Maybe he doesn't want to do that. He spoke so highly of Tyrese Haliburton. He said, quote, we've been in the trenches together for 3 years. He's inspiring, man. The way he works, the way he goes about his day-to-day life. He always holds himself to a high standard. You want to surround yourself with people like that. And then later he said, quote, he's a great leader. I'm sure before this camp, he was already getting together with a lot of the rookies and those guys, helping them out, helping them learn the system. It's great for them to be around here early and participate in these camps and really see a little bit of what Tyrese is about. What you're seeing today and hearing today is 3 of the best connectors on the Pacers, all getting the praise and getting people to show up for them because of what they do. James Johnson is among them, but we will see if he is back. There's also a story you can read from me in Forbes about this whole situation with James Johnson and where the Pacers stand there. A couple more coaching things. Lloyd Pierce, Mike Weinar, Johnny Carpenter. We got to talk about Kevin Pritchard and Malike Beasley for some reason. So many more things as we close out today's Locked On Pacers. Back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making this your first listen today and every single day, or second listen, Locked On Raptors, because they have Bobby Webster as their GM now, and they were connected to one Kevin Pritchard. Many reports from different people. I don't want to say for sure because I can't remember them, but I believe the Toronto Star, which is Doug Smith, and then Sportsnet, which is Michael Grange, had reports about the hunt for the Raptors' new front office leader after Masai Ujiri is no longer in the role. And Kevin Pritchard, Chad Buchanan's names came up. And so that's obviously noteworthy. You know, I said the same things about Mike Weinar, and that we'll get to him in a second. And that obviously has changed significantly in situations as I talked about it. But first of all, like, good, sharp people get pursued for jobs, and the Pacers just made the conference finals and the finals. You would think that there are people with, you know, in powerful basketball positions would be of note for other teams. So it does make sense that they would be candidates. But the connection there is fascinating, of course. Because I think it was, I can't remember which story it was. I don't want to assign it to an author and get it wrong, but one of them talked about Pritchard being a candidate, but also his name being floated a lot in league circles as like maybe it's a leverage thing for his own contract situation. I will admit that I don't know the Pacers front office guys' contract situations. If I knew, I would say myself, but that all makes it interesting. However, the fact that Chad Buchanan also in those, maybe he has the same contract situation, but I certainly would believe if any team, including the Raptors, who had an actual opening, had interest in a Pacers front office member. It seemed like going through the candidates, they were looking for somebody who's good at keeping a team, you know, competitive, above water, and relevant as often as possible. Maybe as opposed to either a new age thinker, not that that's better or worse or anything like that, but just connecting the dots and all that. So if you want to go read the reporting on that, they ended up hiring Bobby Webster, who I've heard good things about, who was the number 2 man under Masai for a long time. Perhaps they hire a new number 2, but again, like, you have good runs like the Pacers did. You make a great coaching hire. You make an A-plus trade. You bounce back from your only rough era as a front office, and look at that, you're right back to good again. Yeah, you're going to get looks like this. So we'll see what this means. But look, it's been good for the Pacers to have the same front office for this long. Like, Pritchard's been in charge for almost a decade now. Chad Buchanan's been his number 2 for a while. Ted Wu's been in there for a while. They have a lot of the same support staff for a while, and they've done a great job. Obviously, they just had the best season they've ever had, for Pete's sake. So just put a pin in that. I don't know if it means anything myself personally, but a lot of reporting from different people saying slightly different things. Of course, that's something to keep an eye on. To the coaching side of the Pacers, Lloyd Pierce. I just wrote a story on this if you want to read it. He went to Basketball Without Borders in Rwanda. First time Basketball Without Borders went to East Africa. He was running the men's side with Hornets coach Charles Lee. Look, you never know what these can turn into, right? Pascal Siakam, his kind of like foray into being a pro came from Basketball Without Borders camp. Same with Joel Embiid. Oscar Tshiebwe on this very podcast 2 years ago admitted that a basketball camp is what connected him to Bismack Biyombo, and he would not be in the NBA without that. So you never know what these kind of roots can do and what they mean, but just good for Lloyd Pierce, man. Like, these are big deal events for all the people involved. And I'm glad he gets to pour into other people with those. In terms of tangible impact on the Pacers this season, and perhaps that Lloyd Pierce moment could have an impact on the Pacers in the future, Mike Weinar is gone. He mutually parted ways with the Pacers, was the phrasing used in the press release. This is not long after, right? He was connected to the Knicks. Wild turn from then to now, because I did an episode of news soon after that where I talked about, man, I'm finally, I'm not surprised this is happening. Like, the Pacers have had all these magical runs. You'd think their assistants would get looks for, big deal coaching jobs. So I wasn't surprised by that. And then the reporting was that he turned the Knicks job down. And of course, since then, that was the reporting, that he pulled himself out of the Knicks. So I'd have to go back and listen to exactly what I said. I might be a little bit complicit here. I don't remember if I said he's staying with the Pacers or that I said specifically he took himself out of consideration for the Knicks job. If I said that I meant, if I said that he's staying for sure, that's on me. That's wrong. I don't remember saying that with any certainty, but whatever. A lot of people, when this happened, were like, wait, didn't he just say he was staying? I don't think that was ever said. That was the line of reporting anyway, was that he was connected to that job, and then it didn't happen. Regardless, look, it's my job to know. I don't know why he's not with the Pacers anymore, right? I don't know. I have no clarity, and that's fine. We don't have to know. These are people making personal life decisions. It's not the end of the world to not know. However, it is a significant loss for the Pacers. He's been with Carlisle for forever, dating back to their first title, I believe, in 2011. Even sooner than that, he won titles at Florida. That dude is a very sharp mind of basketball, especially on offense. Like those football plays that Jenny Busick gets a lot of credit for, deservedly, by the way. She, has talked about the origins of those. Like Weinar did a lot of tweaking of them, and they've been very successful for the Pacers. But not only is he a clever coach, he's a top-tier empathy guy. He's a top-tier emotional, intelligence kind of guy. He's extremely emotive and fun ways to watch on the sidelines. Wish the best for him personally, and a big year for him in many ways. And I hope the best for him. And we'll see if it's for another job or for different reasons. But he is no longer a Pacers assistant. That's a loss. Like, he is a sharp guy, and he obviously, him and Rick see things similarly or get along, or because they've been together for so long. So we will see, or at least presumably, I suppose, we will see if we ever learn more about that. Jim Boylan will now be going to the front of the bench with Lloyd and Jenny Busick. And then replacing Weinar, sort of like the assistant coach. Now they need another one. He won't be on the front of the bench, is Johnny Carpenter. Now, again, I don't know anything about the KP stuff. I don't know anything about why Weiner's leaving. I don't know anything about an assistant coach who was with the Grizzlies last year. Like, I can talk to beat writers for the Grizzlies and have about what they think he's good at. I know little of other teams' assistants beyond that. However, what I do know about Johnny Carpenter is, one, he worked in development and scouting for Memphis. Two, he worked with Carlisle before in the video department in Dallas in 2014-15, I believe. Three, Dustin Dopirak reported in Indy Star that he helped convince the Grizzlies to get Jay Huff, because Johnny Carpenter coached Jay Huff at Virginia. So he's had 2 seasons with Huff. So there's a connection there. I believe he did some work with the Pacers a few years ago in the summer, like I had a summer league. Scott Agnes had pictures of him. Like, that's a remarkable photo pull from Scott there. So he has connections to the current team and the actual franchise from a few years ago. He has connections to Jay Huff. We know what he's done before. A really good story if you want to get to know a little bit about him. You won't actually learn about Johnny Carpenter a ton, but you'll learn about his mind. It was about the Memphis Grizzlies last year and how Taylor Jenkins really tried to transform what they were doing offensively with this new motion offense stuff that's totally different and relies on really different, like, unique spacing and motion principles. Carpenter was partly hired in part because he's tried it before at UVA. So I'm not saying I know everything about that offense and how it would apply to other situations, but a lot of motion, a lot of spacing sounds a little Pacers-y to me. Obviously, the Grizzlies offense was goofy and weird, and people got fired, and they're doing a different coach and going away from that. But we'll see what that connection can look like. It's not unlike what the Pacers do. He has the Huff connection. He has the Carlisle connection. Makes good sense to me why he would be a candidate for their job. And look at that. He's coming to the team. So Mike Weinar out, Johnny Carpenter in. We'll see what kind of impact that has on the team. Last thing, I saw a report that I'm not quite sure I understand. Not that he's not a good player, but connecting the Pacers with interest to Malike Beasley, who, okay, first of all, Mike Scotto reported on teams that have interest in Malike Beasley. He did not include the Pacers there. Regardless, look, the reporting on Malike Beasley was that he is no longer the target of an investigation. That does not mean he's cleared. That does not mean he's innocent. Also, nothing about the reporting means he's guilty either, to be clear. But I was very surprised how many headlines and things I saw that said, he's cleared, he's innocent. Like, we don't know that. We don't know anything about anything here. Look, Malike Beasley's good. Like, if he's totally available and is in no danger of legal trouble that would keep him out of the NBA. Like, yeah, a lot of teams should pursue him, Pacers probably included, but no, if he's not cleared, that's not something that they should look at, and we'll see what happens with him and how that actually goes. But please read the Front Office Sports story about what his current situation actually is if you want a real update on what was said instead of just like gobbledygook, not the target of this specific investigation from this court deal. Sorry, that made me very mad. Anyway, that is the end of today's tour to Pacers news, many of it impactful on their season. None more impactful than James Wiseman's number change. I joke, I kid. Tomorrow, one of my favorite shows of the offseason, What Are the Odds with Jimmy Cook, where we pick a variety of topics and describe the odds that they will happen for the Pacers within the next year. And we look back at what we chose last year as well, which was a hoot. We already recorded it. And then Labor Day will be the last off day of this off season, and then back to every single weekday until the season starts. Woohoo, we're there. Hope you guys enjoyed today's show and learned something of significance. Lots of things to talk about today. You can find me on social media at Tony R. East, and this podcast at Locked On Pacers. Again, back tomorrow with Jimmy talking more about the team. Till then, everybody, have a wonderful day.